ring coming for L5R for just that reason that I was talking about. So with that, I'd like to hand the reins over to Rob Fox so we can start talking about some of the changes and some of the things that he's going to bring to the table.
John said, my name is Rob Fox, and I'm returning to Legend of the Five Rings for the first time in about a decade. I was part of the original team in 1995. I came on AEG as an intern when they were putting this little game together, and I still remember the day when Dave Williams walked up with these little cardboard cards and says, "We're going to play this now, and it's going to be awesome." And I think back on all those guys, and I still can't believe that we're here 20 years later and there's still people playing the game, and the community is as vibrant and enthusiastic as it's always been. It's been amazing, and a lot of that's been due to you. So thank you. What are we going to talk about today? What we want to talk about a little bit about today is where we've been, where we are now, and what we want to do going forward into the future. We're going to paint some broad strokes, but I'm hoping that you'll see the concrete steps and the practical things that we're going to be doing in order to make that happen. And it's divided basically into three key areas: story, the plot, and characters of L5R design, which Ryan's going to talk a little about, and then the interaction, which is the dynamic between us and you that make both of those first two things run. So we're going to start with story. And we go through the way it used to be is the way it worked very well for a long time, is that the design team at All would set up the story, we would see where we wanted it to go, and then we would ask the players which path they wanted to take. So they would set up the story, we would set up the story, we would provide the framework, and then we would come to the community and say, how do you guys want us to get from point A to point B? And that worked really well for a long time. For us, the second day of Thunder, for us, a number of other big events that went off like gangbusters. But right now, it's not quite what we need. We thought about it for what was not clicking the way it used to be. And I think in part was that we were putting the cart before the horse a little bit. And so we made a promise and made a dedication, and we're here to talk about that with you today, to change that dynamic. And now we want to start with the pathways, offer you the choices, and then build the story from there. So, okay, what does that mean? How does that play out? I'll start with the first one, which is the framework. And those are the basic parameters of the storyline, the building blocks, where it all has to go. The major plot points, the major battles, the characters, the political dynamics, the nuts and bolts, the building blocks that go into putting the story together. You put those together, you get sort of an idea of where they go, and you get a general sense of what the major plot lines are affecting the Empire. And it used to be that we would take those and say, okay, here's where we've got to get to. But then we realized that you don't have to get to this point. We can leave that option up to you guys, up to the community. So instead of saying, well, we're going to reach this major epic climax, we can say, here's a possible climax, here's another possible climax, here's another one and another one, and get it grouped together, and then leave it up to you guys, through your decisions, to decide where that ends up. And so starting out, setting out those potential threats, setting out those potential plot lines, that's the framework. And then where it used to be, we would decide all of that. The next step is to start with the choices, and that's where you guys come in. With these general ideas, these basic notions together, we can then go forward at tournaments and online locales with the community and say, where do you guys want to go? What do you want to do? How do you want to react to the framework as it stands? And not worry so much about, oh, we gotta get to this place because else this doesn't happen, this other thing doesn't happen, but just say, hey guys, here's where we are right now. Here's where the Empire is right now. Here's some threats. Here's some possible potential threats. Here are conflicts. What's going to happen next? where do you guys want to see us going? And you tell us through tournament victories, through online forums, through any number of things. We'll get to more of those in a minute. You tell us where you want to go, and then we say, okay, terrific. And the dynamic we've been describing at the office is like an old-fashioned role-playing game, where we're the game master and you guys are the players. We establish the scenario. Here you are. Here come the goblins. What do you do? And not be bound by where we think you're going to go, or let you go where you decide to go. And when you put those two aspects together, take the building blocks, present them to you, and let you make those choices, then you get the story. Framework plus choices equals story. And once we have all those elements, once you have told us where we need to go, we can take that and we can create the next chapter in God's history. And so there's a lot of big sort of overall notions. I want to talk a little bit about some specifics about how we get there, examples about where things have gone wrong a little bit and where we want to get them right again. And a great example is the Seed Heart of Darkness event, which took place 2 weeks ago. We offered you guys a choice. Second city is under siege by the Dark Naga. Is the second city going to prevail, or is the Dark Naga going to prevail? We had some big implications for that. We didn't convey them to you guys properly. We said that it's true that the second city was spared, and that meant that the good Naga, the holy Naga, would be coming back. We didn't convey that. That's a big deal. The Naga comes back. And the Naga only comes back when bad things happen. Had that been different, had the Dark Naga prevailed, the history would have changed. It would have been led to a different destination. You guys had the power. You guys had the choice to make that. We failed to convey that to you. We failed to show you that this was a big deal and why it was a big deal. And that's what's got to change. Now, why did we do that? We did that because we wanted to hold on to some surprises. We wanted to wow you when it came out. And that's a pretty basic building block of story. It can be a hard habit to break. But if we're going to be a whole community, if we're going to be a card game that responds to the wishes of its fans, that's got to change. And that doesn't mean not revealing any of the surprises. It doesn't mean not holding anything back and issuing spoilers months before anything happens. But it does mean opening up the curtain a little bit and showing you where what's working, and giving you some idea of just how big and important a given storyline decision is going to be. And if you do that, and if you see that, then you can understand that, well, it's a big deal, we got to stop the Dark Naga. Or, I kind of like the Dark Naga. Let's go forward with them and see what happens there. And but the choice needs to be yours, and it's our job to respond to that choice. And I'll give you a second example, and this is much more pertinent to what's going on here.
Rob, can I take this down?
Yeah.
So, feeling a little bit more comfortable now. I want to give you a little bit of a picture about how we got here to this meeting. We're not all public speakers. We're not all jumping up and down, being excited and stuff, right? But what we're giving here is examples of how your involvement in the story is going to change, right? The fact that we understand that your involvement in the story needs to change. So, if you go online and you ask what the person that's going to win World is going to get, right? The answer is that person gets the name, the region. Right? Get the name of the region? It's awesome, right? Yeah. Not really. This is what the office looks like when I see that go up online. What the fuck do we need that the region, that this person is going to be the region? What does that mean to the players if we don't tell them in advance of that happening? Right? So you should know everything, every major decision that's going to happen during that time that the regent is on the throne, so that you can choose before you get here which clans to align with, which players to work with to help them build their decks, which cards to put into your deck so that it will affect what we do with the storyline. Right? So there were a lot of F-bombs and yelling and screaming and Skype calls and things that have happened at the company because we realized that flipped shift, right, between framework and choices and story was not in the player's favor, right? Like, I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid of the decision you're going to make. That has been where we have been as a company, right? We put choices out there, we put decks out there, we put things out for players, and then we let them make the decisions. It is really scary, right? If you want to work on this L5R team, you embrace the fear, right? You enjoy the fact that the community, that the people who have signed up for an interactive storyline game get interactive, right? So, Rob's going to tell you what you get for the Emperor's Decree, but we should have told you before. You should have known when you came here. And our pledge to you is that you're going to know moving forward. And the Emperor's Decree includes a lot of cool things for the guy that wins this event. And a few of them are going to be held off for a few weeks so that that person can get knowledge to make a good decision about what they're doing in the story and see their effects in the framing. Just like the Naga decision means that bad things are going to happen to the Empire, the Regent's decisions are going to affect how that all unfolds in future sets.
There you go, Mike. So what does that mean? The winner of this tournament is going to be the Imperial Regent, while the Empress goes into seclusion to choose her heir. That means that the winner of this tournament is going to select a character who acts as the Empress's hand during all of this. And there's real world stuff. There's going to be swag. It's cool swag. I like it. But that's not unusual. That's standard issue for big tournaments like this one. What we want to give you guys is some very real and very definable decisions to make in the world. And that's the three parts that you're going to have to make a big decision regarding the winter tournaments. You're going to have to make a big decision that's going to involve the card game. And you're going to have to make a big decision that involves the interactive novel, which is being written right now. We'll get to in a little bit. All those things are going to be in the hands of the winner of this tournament. We're going to fill in, and he's going to make, he or she is going to make a decision once this is all done tomorrow. And then we're going to keep in touch, and we're going to fill them in on story details that aren't going to be available to the public. Let's fill them in on where it's going. We're going to treat them like the Regent. My lord, something is happening. Here's what's happening. We don't know what to do. The Empress is in seclusion. What do we do? And the winner is going to be able to say, well, I think we should do this. And from there, we're going to move forward with those decisions. And it's going to be reflected in the card set, in the game, in the role-playing game, in the novel.
Decisions you will be proud to have your name associated with.
Yeah.
Proud to have your name associated with.
And that brings us to the next slide. What we need to expect both for this kind of decision for the regions and for tournaments and the game itself going forward. What do we need? What can you expect? What do you want to see when we step into these halls and play this game? Well, it's got to be an interesting framework. The details, the building blocks have got to be compelling. That means characters got to be cool. That means the events have to have some ramifications. It can't just be, let's say, the Emperor's horse white instead of gray. It has to have some teeth. And as John intimated, it's got to be something that you can see. Well, we need that choice. The choices themselves have to be compelling. Again, it can't be the color of a banner. It can't even be who gets the sword. Okay, he gets the sword, so what? What happens when he gets the sword? Who's going to come after him with the sword? What is he going to have to do with this sword? What's he going to have to do? What's the outcome of a battle going to be? What is a given fortress going to do in the middle of a battle? How are these things going to pivot based on the outcome of tournaments and the outcome of your decisions? You have to make those decisions from an informed place. We love surprises. Fiction is based on surprises, on not knowing what's going to happen next. And we're going to keep that, but we can't keep you guys in the dark at the same time. We have to fill you in on the ramifications of these choices and let you make a decision from an informed point of view, from a passionate point of view, from the point of view of a fan, and then move forward from there. And from all of that, once you've made those choices, we got to deliver on the story. We got to tell a story, fiction, the cards themselves, and the whole collective aspect of L5R that is really, really cool. And so that's our challenge, and that's what we need to do with the building blocks you give us. Yeah, and so the next step is design, and that's going to tie into these aspects. And I'm going to turn it over to my beloved colleague, Brian Reeves.
So, Ivory Edition. When we set out to do Ivory Edition, we had some goals in mind. We wanted to make it a much more approachable game, a much more accessible game. For new players, but for you guys as well, right? L5R is a complicated game. You need to be an expert in gameplay in order to pretend to try to get into L5R. That's how it's been. And so we had this goal where we wanted to try to make it easier for the new player. I think it was a good goal, and I think we are getting there in achievement, but it's not a perfect process. It's much more organic than that, right? It's going to take time where the things we think how they're going to work, how they wind up working out, and then we got to adjust the flow of that. One of the things was the clan essence. We've talked with ourselves internally about what went right, what's gone wrong, what we still need to fix with Ivory Edition. We've been talking a lot with you guys out there. You've been coming to us. We've been coming out to you, trying to figure out. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the clan essence. And what I mean by that is making your clan feel like your clan. While we did a good job of that at the Stronghold at the clan level, what we did is to make the game more accessible for new players. We had a lot of personalities that didn't have text or maybe just a little bit of text. And what winds up happening with that is you get a lot of personalities that pretty much look the same from one clan to the next, right? Whether you're Hita Bob or you're Hita Ken or whatever, you're 3-3 for 4 with the appropriate keyword. This one's dark blue, and that one's powder blue, and this one's gold, so on and so forth. It's creating an experience where a lot of times it doesn't feel like you're really, like there's the difference if you're playing the crab, or you're playing the crane, or you're playing lion, or mantis, or whatever. And we're taking a really big focus going forward, 2015 and beyond, in making sure that your cards feel like the clan that you're playing. So that you don't walk away and like, well, yeah, that was a crab deck, but it played just like the crane deck I played earlier. So we're getting a bigger focus on the clan identity, not just at the clan level, but at the individual level. We're not going to be quite as afraid to make cards that are personalities that have just a little bit of text. Another thing that we can be doing is tying each clan's essence to the new mechanics. So Courage came out in a line in the sand, and I think it's gone off pretty well. Last time we left Courage, but we didn't tie Courage into any of the clans. We didn't have crab personalities that reacted to what happened when you played Courage cards. Or they get extra force or something when you played Courage cards. We didn't have cranes who gained honor when you did Courage. Mantis, maybe they increased range attacks, something like that. We didn't have a tie-in between the new mechanics and the clans to emphasize how my clan is showing their courage differently than yours. And that was something we were messed up, and that's something that we are working on going forward into 2015. Something that we've obviously always done is constant card by card reviews, but a specific focus that we're taking in on this set is we're going through each set and making sure that as we go through the set, that the clans feel like the clans. That's such an important part of the game, and we think that we lost a little bit of focus on that. When we were going through with our goals of trying to make the game more accessible for new players, better for you guys, that we lost a little bit of focus at a personality level. It needs to feel like a clan.
Yeah, I take some personal responsibility for the 3-4 guys with no text, because I need like 18 of those guys in my deck to be able to play L5R. I think I used the CEO stick a little hard on that.
We were playing a game earlier the other day, and he was confused by J-Proling. He didn't know how it worked.
That's unnecessary.
So another one of the big things that keeps coming up that we didn't properly analyze, and we're having to deal with is the economic differences, and we all know what this is, little subpar, you get a start that's a little better. You start your turn, your second turn with 2 gold, 3 gold, maybe even 4 gold more than I do, and it just goes downhill. When we streamline the economics of ivory, we didn't properly analyze how the difference in gold starts that's classically always going to be there, how that delta grew and affected the game more than it ever had before. And so we are taking a very specific action in 2015, and that's the return of legacy holding. There's going to be one legacy holding. It's called Forgotten Legacy, and it's a little bit different than legacy holdings in the past. So the reason we got away from the legacy holdings in the past is, while it was built to be a safety net, it wound up being a crutch, right? People who maybe are newer to legacy holdings, you get to go buy it straight out of your deck. So what happened before with the legacy holding is you get to buy it straight out of your deck. So turn 1, you were buying the legacy holding. That happened 90% of your games. Then turn 2, you started buying the regular gold. It wasn't a safety net in case you got a bad gold draw. It was just the default position. So we've added a cost to getting your legacy holding, or not a cost, but an extra effect to legacy holding. And you have to remove a card from your hand from the game. In doing so, going to get the legacy holding is there as a safety net if you need it. If you get an unfortunate gold start, you get a bad flip, you can go get your legacy holding. But it's not the default action. You'd rather not to, right? I mean, nobody wants to remove a card from the game from the hand. Another thing that we did is you can see the deck restriction there. You have to have at least 16 holdings in your deck in order to put it in. Another one of the problems that happen with legacy holdings, gets some favors, working, is while they were there for a safety net, they wound up getting abused. I was able to make decks that were just my stronghold, just that starting holding that I was guaranteed to. Didn't need to run any other holdings, and I was no longer using this as a safety net to protect me in case I got a bad draw, but instead I was counting on the fact that this was, and then min-maxing my deck around it. I did this, right? This is one of the biggest struggles. It's like, I used to be on your guys' side trying to break this stuff, and now I'm on my side trying to figure out how you're going to break this stuff. It's quite a juxtaposition. So one other thing you're going to notice on the holding here is it doesn't actually say that it produces any gold. It's just got a number in the upper right corner, like it was a stronghold. That's the gold production set. One thing we noticed when we were teaching people how to play Ivory Edition is they need to read all their holdings to figure out how much gold they need to spend. They have an attachment that costs 3 gold, so they pick up the first holding, read it, oh no, that produces 2. Pick up the second, no, that's 2. No, that's 4. And they have to go through this whole stack to try to figure out how much gold that they could produce. Now we have a really quick visual reminder right there in the corner that will tell you at a quick glance how much gold you have available. If you need about a particular holding in order to get a particular gold cost that you need to pay for, such as an attack or whatever, you can quickly at a glance just see, okay, I need 4, these 2 produce 2, done. Really helps new players help speed the game. Another thing that you guys have wanted, and we wanted for a long time, is gold stability, right? Since, we'll just say forever. Every single arc that comes out, the rules change. And you need to learn the game again. We don't want that anymore, and we know that you don't want that anymore. And when the next base set that rolls out, we're keeping it stable. It wasn't perfect. We found a flaw or two, a couple things that we missed, such as targeting, that we're tweaking and fixing. But for the most part, there's going to be no major changes. Nothing's going to change. You don't have to learn how to play the game again when you go into 2015. And this is the goal that we set out with Ivory Edition, and we're going to continue. We have no plans to change anything unless we actually have to just fix a minor thing here and there. One thing this allows us to do is to focus on the game quality. So one thing that's frustrating about when you get to change, or when you are changing the rules of the game, is you're not just designing cards for what they are right now, you're designing for what your perception of the rules and the environment is going to be. And that makes it really difficult, and that's one of the places where we've had to come along and fix things, like the economic stuff that we were just talking about, right? We did not properly analyze what the economics was going to do. We're going to do. With this change now, we can focus knowing that the rule set aren't going to change. So we know how the game is working, and we know that next year, the rules of the game are going to be working the exact same. So it's going to allow us to really pinpoint in on what we should be doing, which is designing the best game of the game. Alright, so how are we going to do the job? Those of you who are playtesters out there, you already recognize this first one. It's the Playtest Dojo. It's a new thing that we actually didn't even have an Ivory Edition all around. It's new since Ivory Edition. It's an online database where playtesters enter in all their playtest information. More or less the same format that we've been doing it for years. But now that it goes into a database, we can access information like we've never been able to access it before. If we want to know what the crowd win-loss ratio is, at the click of a couple buttons, we can figure it out. We want to get more specific, and we want to know how Mantis Honor is doing. We can figure that out. We want to know how Phoenix Military is doing against Scorpion Dishonor. Again, a few clicks of a button, we can figure it out. It allows us to focus by our solutions and really identify the problems before cards go to print in a way that we've never had before. I'm really loving the playtest dojo. Another thing that we always want to do, and I think we've done really well with Ivory Edition, we want to keep doing, is the room for creativity. When we design the clans, when we design the decks, we design your theme, we design your sub-themes, but it's important that there's enough room in this sandbox for you to figure out the game on your own and you to build the kind of decks that you want to build. Design shouldn't be just handing you your decks and like, well, you can try to figure out stuff, but guess what? It's not as good as this other thing that we've already done for you. That was a problem I think it plagued Emperor Edition. I think a lot of you probably feel that. And Ivory Edition has really opened up that for your creativity. A great example of this is the Mantis Ogre dueling deck that did so well in the Kotek season. I promise you that wasn't part of the design plan. But it was great, right? Like, you guys figured it out, you put it together, and you started winning stuff with it. That's awesome. And that's the kind of creativity that needs to be there. And if you want to play a more classic Mantis deck, awesome, that's got to be there for you too. We just need to make sure that no matter what it is that you want to do, whether you want to go with the more classic decks, whether you want to find your own stuff and put cards together in combinations that we haven't thought of, that's right there for you.
And that has to be reflected in the storyline too. We have to decide how an Ogabushi is going to be working with the Mantis and why. And show that. Because that's something you guys brought to us.
Exactly. Your creativity needs to hit on all levels, not just in the game, but then that needs to be impacted in the story. A perfect example, like you said. Now that the Ogabushi are apparently working hand in hand with the Mantis, we got to figure out what that means for the plan going forward.
Cool.
Public reviews. So we internally review the game constantly at every level, whether it's design, whether it's the story, whether it's the interaction. We're doing this all the time. But we're not necessarily making this public, and we aren't doing a great job of communicating to you guys that we're doing this. So a lot of times when you see that we are reacting to the problem, it looks just like that it's a reaction, that we're not being proactive about making sure that the game is in a healthy state, or that the story is delivering on the levels that it should be. What we're going to start doing is do public reviews. We're just going to start making this public. When we do our reviews, we're going to start posting them up online. More or less the state of the game, how we think the game is going, what we think is going right, things that we're keeping an eye on. For those of you who are old, you might remember the old watch list. That type of stuff. Where it's like, okay, we see that these are going on with the game. We've noticed a problem with this, so we're keeping an eye on this. We want you guys to know that we are keeping an eye on it, and that we're not just waiting for you guys to find a problem, and then we'll react to it. So I've been really awesome at expressing the ARC legalities and how all this stuff works, but I think there might still be some people out there driving it. So I'm going to give this another job because I've failed miserably on basically every level of properly saying what we got here. So this is the Ivory Edition legality. We got your old bug that's Emperor Edition up there. We got your current bug that's Ivory Edition, and you got your future bug that's the 2015. So ARC when you're playing in an arc and you're wondering what parts are legal for arc, everything with the curved bug. In this case, we got the purple bug, so ivory edition. You decide that you want to play extended. What does that mean? That means you also pull in the old bug. So you play everything with the curved bug, you play the ivory edition, the purple bug, and anything that also has a green bug as well. Right? You get to play with both of them. And in the case of ivory edition, that would be every. So do as you will. Then you have strict. So strict is the strongholds and the senseis from the current base set, plus everything with the future bug on it. In layman's terms, it's everything from the base set forward. But there's anything with the blue bug on it, plus the strongholds and the senseis from the ivory edition, because those are generally single bugs, so they don't have a blue bug on. As this applies to ivory edition bugs, like I said, you see ivory edition, the Coming Storm, Line, and Sandy Ward, they all have the purple bug and the blue bug. That means they're currently legal for ivory edition, and they are also going to be legal for 2015. Even ivory edition is going to be legal for yet a whole other year. So there's some continued confusion on that. I hope that maybe I haven't failed for once on getting this information across, because I seem to not be doing a very good job of that. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ralph.
I know we got a important round to start, so we're going to move very quickly through this last section, and it sort of ties all of this together. And what I'm getting at, what Ryan's been getting at, in a very broad sense, is that this process depends on a healthy interaction between you guys and all of you guys and us. And we just want to talk a little bit about some of the ways we see it being done, and give you some concrete examples of how it's being done. And the first step is the most obvious one, is better communication. We've always prided ourselves on a company that listens to its fans and responds to its fans, and lately we have not done that as well as we need to. And as John indicated in the beginning of this, the first step to do that was to hire some more people to work L5R full time, dedicate people to L5R. My presence here is part of that. We've also got a great marketing director in Joshua Gibbons, and we're hiring some more fiction writers. We're doing a number of other PR people are involved, and we're moving forward with that. Throwing some bodies in the breach. We're also going to take more time to interact. And this is part of our, in 1995, there basically was no internet. And I think sometimes we still think that way, and it's just not the way to do it. We're going to dedicate time scouring the forums, looking at responses to our Facebook page, looking through emails, making sure that when you voice concerns to us or when you voice things you want to see in the game, we listen and we hear you. And it also means using tools, internal tools, a lot better. And that's going to form the crux of the rest of this. I'll give you some examples of the tools we've been using that you'll see. And
tools to do a better job so you have fewer concerns.
And it starts with the Imperial Assembly. The Imperial Assembly is up. It's live. And I think it killed some people getting it up, but we got it up. And it's up and running. We're very happy with how it's going so far. And performing the duties of the Herald, the Imperial Herald, and a number of other things. But it's more than just a website. We're looking at it as a way to address things very, very rapidly. If someone has a concern about a deck, you think this combo may be broken. And we don't think so. We think it's just a question of you haven't faced the right deck yet. You've got another set of cards that can counter pretty effectively. We can respond to that instantly instead of having to wait 3 or 4 months. We need to respond instantly instead of having to wait 3 or 4 months. We've got a dedicated editor, Dave Lederer, who lives in Canada, and he sort of forms the bridge between you and us. He's a game store owner, but he's dedicated to the assembly full time. It's his job to get up cool articles, cool deck lists, cool things that people can have, and he's going to respond when you guys have questions and concerns about it. That's the assembly. Vanguard program, had bounty hunter program for a long time, and they're trying to grow the community and find people who may not have as many players to play with, find them new players and get them involved, get them excited. We're currently in a search for a dedicated Vanguard league who will do for the Vanguard what Dave is doing for the Imperial Assembly. We also need to get the sales guy in there and make sure that he's pumped and pushing the vanguard as hard as he can, and getting tools for demos available and out there, and for anybody who wants to help, and for people who have already agreed to help, getting that to them and making sure that their job is as easy as possible. Other things we've got going on. The interactive novel, we talked about this earlier, I think it's out there. We're going to have a novel being written right now by Robert Denton. That's going to follow the things I said about story, that he's going to write a few chapters, there's going to be a point, and one of the points is here at the tournament. We can get to that in a little bit, but that point is going to pivot the plot of the novel, and the players will decide which direction it's going to go in. And he's going to sit down and write a few more chapters, there'll be another spot, and we're going to take a view, where do we go from here? And at the end of that, we're going to have a novel, complete story written, where you guys can see how your decisions have influenced the course of the story. And the key example is the region's choice is going to happen. The person who wins this tournament is going to be able to affect, through his or her position as region, going to affect the way this novel goes. I want to be a little more specific about that. I got to walk over that the first time. The decision we're going to make tomorrow, we're going to offer the winner of this tournament tomorrow. We already know the Naga are coming back. We already know that bad things happen when the Naga are coming back. They're going to need to decide whether the Empire is going to ally themselves with the Naga, or whether the Naga are going to remain outside. That's going to have a pretty big impact on what happens next, because as we said, the Naga will come back if bad things happen. So, the region's going to have to make that choice, and that's the privilege and that's the reward for winning this tournament. And finally, this is more of a general thing than a specific tool, but we need to do better about rewarding clan loyalty and rewarding people who stand by their clans and look at it as a point of honor to play their clans, rather than just going, well, I don't like this clan so much, but their deck's too well. It involves a risk reward, which is if you come in with a wonky deck from a clan that struggles in tournaments and you somehow get through and win, that's got to be reflected. That's cool. That's awesome. And that's got to be reflected more prominently than it has been. And we need to do that. Part of our job is doing that without slighting more successful decks, without slighting more popular decks. We don't want to punish decks that do well and decks that win. But we do want to celebrate a clan that struggles through a cycle, it comes through. We also need to make sure that when a clan is struggling on the tournament scene, or just in general, that we pay attention to that. And we have a close look at that and see how that goes. So if a clan is struggling more, it's going to get more attention from us. Design and story is going to look at it and see where we can improve it and what we can do with it. And the impact of all of that has to be significant. There has to be potential for victory of a struggling deck that isn't typical, it's unusual, that rewards people who stand and say, yes, this is my clan, right or wrong. I'm not going to play the numbers, I'm going to stand by the clan that I adhere to. We want to see that in tournaments and elsewhere. And that, I think, is just about where we're at. We're turning 20 years old, like I said at the beginning of this. And I don't think if you talk to Matt Wilson or Dave Williams or John Wick or any of the other people who were there in that office, this is going to be around. There's going to be a room full of people like this, excited and interested in the game. I don't think any of us would believe it. We're staggered. We're stunned. It's amazing. And being here now, seeing all of this, we have to thank you again for making this game such an extraordinary journey. L5R changed my life. And looking at you guys, I realized, you helped do that. So in 2015, we've got 20 festivals coming, which is the next Ivory 2. And it's a celebration of 20 years of this game. And as part of that, we want to renew our pledge to you. We want to cooperate with you. We want to help you help us make this game the very best it can be, and to follow on to make the second 20 years as great as the first 20. So that's it, and thank you so much for taking the time and coming out and listening to us. And time to get on with the tournament and see who's going to
sneak up behind me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
I want to point out a couple of things that we missed during the presentation so that everybody would understand what they're looking at here. The name of the next base set and the arc for next year is 20 festivals. there's going to be a lot of 20 things going on next year, as you could guess. And we have definitely challenged ourselves to make next year, the 20th anniversary year of L5R, the best on as many levels as we possibly can. I think my favorite card name of all time is Be Prepared to Dig Two Graves, right? The one that we use at the office a lot right now is deeds, not words, right? So our presentation for you here today was to show you we understand what L5R means to you as players, right? It's now our job to deliver that to you in a way we have never done so before. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're supporting us, the fact that you have been involved with L5R for such a long time, I have no doubt that when I'm standing in Greece next year, talking with you, it's going to be about how amazing the year was, how exciting the storyline is, and how interesting the future looks for L5R and the product. We all want to thank you for everything you've done. We want to wish everybody that's in contention and all the events good luck this weekend. And we are, we've been secluded a little bit today trying to get this whole thing in order, but we really would like for you guys to flag us down, talk to us about the things that you want to see in the games, because this is our best opportunity to talk to you about those things. So thank you all again. We really appreciate it. Good luck tonight. So the budget came up. Do we want to take questions? Is there we're happy to take questions, so we're happy to talk individually with everybody. Danger, World Robinson. Danger. We want to take questions? Yes? No? Yes? We have a question. Any chance? So the answer.
God bless you. God bless you, sir.
The answer to that question has to be, right? Has to be, what was that? Sorry, is there any chance for the Rattlings to come back, right? So, if we hold true to what we have presented here to you fans, right, then anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. I don't know if the Rattlings will come back, but if there is an emergent voice that turns into a movement, that turns into decks, that turns into other things, and we notice it and we put it out there as an option, if the players can make that option happen, that is the direction that we're going to take the game. So anything could happen. I do believe that too. Standing here, and last year I would have said no. The Rattlings did not make that. So. Any other questions? Yes.
Is there any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Is there any?
We are. Repeat the question. Is there a plan for better communication between the rules and the design team? There is. You may not see the results of that for several months because sets are in the pipeline, but we've just been talking about it this weekend. Rob is going to take a more active role as the lead designer in the production process, the development process, and we've been talking about these issues because we realize that it has been a problem, and so again, I'll answer that very briefly. Yes, and you can feel free to talk to me during the remainder of the evening about this issue.
Yes.
Yep.
The new legacy holding, will it be starting in play for how we're going second layer as the old legacy holdings did, or just to event through?
So the question was, legacy holdings, are they going to start to play like or would you be able to get one for going second like before? I don't know how much the text of Legacy was literally written on the card, so I don't know how well you're able to see in the back. The rules for what the Legacy Holding is going to do is you are going to just straight recruit it, so that one costs 3 gold, produce 3 gold, so you pay 3 gold as a dynasty action to go get it from your deck, put it into play, remove a card from your hand from the game. It does not have anything to do with going seconds like it did previously. It is just a straight fish it out of your deck. We're maintaining with the flip your stronghold over for the going second, but we have reevaluated, and you'll see some of the effects in 20 festivals, and you'll see even more effects going forward, because 20 festivals was more or less done by the time I released. But we have reevaluated the strength of the going second side, and whether we hit that mark or whether it's come up short or been too strong, we've been looking into that. So for now, is the flipping over. We have no plans for the Legacy to get a free hold. What was the other? Yeah.
Are there going to be league strongholds going forward in the next set?
In 20 festivals, some of your strongholds will be coming back. Some of you will get brand new strongholds. I've got them here with me. You want to see what they are? Come find them. Yes.
So, library edition changes a lot of the rules, and you then have to adapt to that as you go along. So we won't really see that in 20 festivals. But Emperor edition earned a lot of goodwill and fatigued out players. So a lot of us look at cards now and go, we don't want to stay around, we don't want to wait. And what do you have to say to that?
So the question was, Emperor Edition fatigued a lot of players, and they're looking at Ivory Edition now. They're not seeing the changes they're hoping to see.
The changes you made, I believe they were all good, but you have to learn how to design with those changes now, and that takes time. And the time you had was kind of burned already by Emperor.
Right.
So where you have to adjust to a new goal scheme, for example, and you have it going forward, but it'll take time for us to see that, and you could lose a lot of players before that comes true.
Right. I mean, and as we've been saying, is D's not the word, right? So I mean, we noticed the goal scheme difference in time to get it in for 20 festivals, which I mentioned went to break more or less just a little bit after Ivory Edition came out. It went away. So a lot of this stuff we have noticed, and hopefully seeing things like the Forgotten Legacy, like the re-devotion to your clanness and the clan essence, will help show that we are on the right track. We were designing Ivory Edition 20 festivals. We were working really, really heavy on this as it came out. So I would like to think that when you saw Ivory Edition, you got excited, got started, you saw the coming storm, and it really started blooming with the line in the sand. And that's when we really started hitting our stride with the line in the sand. A lot of the senses came out that I think have excited a lot of players, have been interesting. And so it did take time. And I think the time that we're seeing is currently right now in Ivory Edition, and a lot of those wrinkles have gone smooth out for 20 festivals. Is it these hot words? I understand. Hopefully we've been able to get some examples to show that we do get it, and that we're adjusting and adapting to most of the biggest complaints.
The only way to deal with that, is to do great moving forward. There is no looking back in the rearview mirror and changing what has happened, right? And if we have created a disenfranchised player who just is having trouble getting back into the game, trusting what we're doing, it may take an extra set to get them back. But we are uber committed that it won't just be one part of the game that sucks you in. Design is great, so I'm just going to keep playing L5R because design is great, and the story is weak, and interaction is weak, and I don't get that feeling that I used to have, right? L5R is the whole pie, right? So the way we do that faster is by making the whole pie awesome and then putting ice cream on top.
And the rule stability has to do with that as well.
I think the two worst performing player bases at the moment are Spider and Phoenix, probably in terms of team success. Without wanting to break over, there are two similar rules regarding the environment, which are actually practicing insults about players who are based on that I'm not asking for any changes or anything like that with respect to this regards to the land is how can we do more to make sure that doesn't happen again? That we don't get into a situation where people who are already in a bad place are at least apparently
Yeah, so the basic question, and I'll please interrupt me if I'm misquoting, was two of the struggling planets are Spider and Phoenix. They both have really heavy meta to them in the form of Purge of Buddhism and Victory through that Venture Movement Chicken. What are the assurances that we have going forward that these types of things aren't going to hit? In the case of Purge of Buddhism, it was very unfortunate the timing that it got triggered. It was, again, as John was pointing out, it was the time when we were still sort of getting into the rhythm of Ivory Edition. A lot of these cards that seemed like they were at an acceptable difference between Emperor and Ivory wound up not being an acceptable difference, right? A card that might have been fine in Emperor wasn't okay in Ivory. And a lot of that, unfortunately, was just part of the learning curve of where we were going, right, with the power up and getting us back to this sort of an organic process. We have new tools in place, as I pointed out, for Playtest Dojo, which not only allows us to get the statistical data, but allows us to digest the sort of written data in a much easier to digest form. We're also working with a design team that's engaged more than I think we've ever had a design team engaged. And speaking actually of the design team in Spider, I wanted to announce here at Worlds that we're going to have a new member to the PDT. We talked to him at Gen Con. He's very interested in joining. Actually, that's about a week ago. Andrew Ornthal is now going to be a member of the design team. So, something excited about it. Now he's starting work now. We're getting ready to start work on the last expansion of 20 festivals, and we started on the base set following 20 festivals. So that's when you can start seeing the impact. When Spider does dominates the environment in 20 festivals, don't blame Andrew. Wasn't his fault. But I mean, it's just about being vigilant, right? We talked about how we're going back to the card by card review. A lot of the work that I'm having to do right now is going to be taken off our plate by the bigger staff that we'd already talked about. So I have more time to dedicate to the design, the play test, more than I've been able to do in the past. And it's just about remaining more and more vigilant. We're always open to more play testers. We actually have a bigger play test than we have right now, but there's a forum on L5R.com. Yeah. You want to be a part of play test? Fill out the form online. There's not a whole lot of teams. Actually, I don't think we've ever said no to a team. We give everyone a chance. If you got something to add, you want to get in and impact this game that you love, head to L5R.com and send to the player interaction tab.
I've got a question with the workday guide. You mentioned it will continue, but how did it continue? How is the future of the RPG, elemental books, all out by now? What's coming next? Is there anything coming next? What's the future?
The question is, what's the status of the role-playing game? And is there more coming next? Will it continue? The answer is an emphatic yes, it will continue. Rob Hobart is our guy in charge of the role-playing game, and he has no intention of stopping. And we have products planned in 2015 and beyond. Can't say how often, can't say how fast, we are not stopping the role-playing game. And I I'm an old school RPGer, and I'm not going to have that just quiet on the way. So there was in the black.
My question is, just the GPI. So, still, there is an interrupt, and there is different problems. And you mentioned for new players, there should be clear rules. And my question is,
Sorry, would you mind? I'm having a difficult time. Would you mind coming up a little and I can hear you better? Come on, Dan.
job with GPI, there is the issue with the interrupts.
The victory play interrupt?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
The question is, will you use the review for example, so the interrupt or
So the question was, with interrupts, some of them are not as clear as they could be for new players, whether it's entering play or there's geisha, or forgetting it's not maybe but one of the geisha who is not quite clearly worded. I mean, that was definitely part of the learning curve as well. Was adjusting all reactions to basically one timing window and making the wording as clear as could be. We got a pretty good success rate. There's always room for improvement. We're going to continue on improving, trying to make sure that it's clear at what point you use the interrupt and at what point it takes effect. So is that, hopefully that answers your question. Anything else? We got any more? One more question? All right. He's actually got the tournament structure, whether the best of three is going to continue, is going to move forward, whether it's going to one round. I'm unfortunately not comfortable in being able to answer that question. I don't have a good answer for it. I don't want to speculate for day-to-day. As far as I know, the next year's co-type season is going to continue as it is, but again, I'm not the guy to ask. I don't want to speculate and put words in the mouth, right? One more?
Yeah, when will the new strongholds be made public?
When will the new strongholds be made public? Well, I haven't planned on showing them, other than I just decided to say that. That happens sometimes. So I guess, yeah, probably when I get back home. You guys get a sneak preview for coming out here to Worlds, and then when we get back home, we'll throw them up online. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
So just to quickly update people, obviously that was the end of the AG announcement. If we give us a few minutes, we'll get the top 16 up on the screen for you. There's no more planned features for tonight, but we will be live with the top 16 tomorrow.